Hey everyone, today we are going to talk about Python list and tuple data types. So let's start with list. Lists are one of the most versatile data structures you will use in your programming journey. So basically, a list is a value that contains multiple values inside it in an ordered sequence. A list begins with an opening square bracket and ends with a closing square bracket. Values inside the list are also called items, and items are separated with commas. This is an example of a list. I will call this list as numbers. List of some integer numbers. So this is list of numbers. And this is also a list. This is list of string. So list can contain any data type. And this is also a list, and it contains a string, a integer, a boolean value, a none value, and a floating point value. So list can contain any data types. This is how we declare or we initialize lists in Python. And list can be accessed using their indexes. Basically, the index of the list will start from 0. So the first item will be at 0th position, and the second item is at the first position. Sushi is at index 2 and tacos is at index 3. For accessing the item pizza, we need to use the menu, the list, followed by the index of the item inside a square bracket. So this is at the 0th index. In list, remember that the indexing starts from 0, not from 1. So if we execute this, it will just print pizza because pizza is at the 0th position. We can also print all the items in the list, and every item will be accessed using the index of the list. So you can see that the item at 0 is pizza, the item at first position is burger, then sushi and tacos. And if we try to access any index which is not within the range of list, then it will throw an error. Let's say we are trying to print menu at sixth position. There is no sixth position here because we only have four items and we have the index 0, 1, 2 and 3. So if we enter any index above 3, it will throw an error. See, it says that index error, list index out of range. So we have to make sure that we are accessing the elements using the index within the range of the list that we have. And do remember that indexes can only be integer values, not floating point, not string, not boolean or nothing else. And these indexes can only be integer values. If we try to access the list with any other data type index, let's say we are accessing 1.0, and if we just run this, it says that list indices must be integer or slices, not float. So we cannot use floating point numbers for accessing these elements in the list. But let's say if we are converting this floating point number into some integer, it will work. We are converting 1.0 into integer and then using that integer to access items in the list. So now this works because the 1.0 is converted to integer which is 1, and then we are calling that 1 as an index to this menu list, so it will work. But if you use this floating point or any other data types directly, they are not going to work in list. And the beauty of list is it can contain nested list as well. So it can have another list inside. Let's say that we have, so if you look at this, it is basically a list which is menu and price is a list. So it has two nested list inside. So the first one is list of string, the second one is the list of integers, and it says menu and price, and this would be menu and this could be price. If we want to get menu from this, we can just call this menu of 0. If you just sorry, menu and price of 0, and if you try to print this, it will basically print the first item, so which is the at index 0. So this is the 0th index, and this entire list is treated as only one item. And if we again want to access the item in the list inside the list, you need to provide one more index. Let's say if you want to access burger, which is at 0 first position, you will provide 1 here. So basically in the first index, you are accessing this first item in the master list, which is a list again, and you are providing the second index, which will look for that index in the inside list. So if we print this now, so it has printed burger because it's going into this list first, and again it's going inside this item at index 1. And the same way, for accessing the prices, we can just use the same list followed by the index 1. So if you access the index 1, it will print this entire list. See this. And if you want to access some particular price, let's say the price at index 2, you can just provide index, and so it will print that item, so which is 45. And these lists also come with negative indexes. Remember our first list, which is menu. I'll type it here for readability. So what is negative indexing, right? While list index start at 0 and go up, you can also use negative integers for the index. And the integer value -1 refers to the last item of the list. And the value -2 refers to the second to the last item in the list, and so on. So this is -1, -2, -3, and -4. So basically every item will have two indexes, can be accessed in two different ways. So the negative indexes are very useful in case if you have a very big list and if you don't know what is the last element of the list, right? If you don't know the length of the list, instead of iterating the every element in the list, you can just use -1 and can access the last element in the list. So if I print menu of -1, so it should print tacos. So you see it has printed tacos. So this is negative indexing in list. And let's say if you want to access or if you want to create a new list using few elements in the list, you can do slicing. So let's say you have menu, which is these things. For slicing the list, you just use a colon in between, and you can type an integer on the left of the colon and to the right of the column. So the left of the column says the start of the slice, and the right side of the column will say the end of the slice. Let's say if I print the menu list sliced from 1 to 3, it will print the item at position 1, which is this burger, and it will also take the item at position 2, which is sushi, and the last one, which is the end, is exclusive, so the tacos is not included. So it will print from 1 to 2, it will consider from 1 to 2. If you run this, say it has printed burger and sushi, so it will slice the list and generate another list out of it. So this is called slicing in list. And even with slicing, we have a shortcut, and you can leave either the start of the slice or the end of the slice as empty to select everything on that side. So let's say that I want to select menu from 0, I mean the beginning, till sushi, right? 0, 1, 2, I have to provide 3 here. So as this 0 is from the beginning, you can just skip entering 0 and you can use colon 3, so that if nothing is provided as start of the slice, it will select everything from the beginning. So if you run, you can see that it has pizza, burger, and sushi, meaning the start of the slice. And you can also print the same till the end of the list. So you can use 2 colon and just leave the end like that, so that it will consider everything from 2. 2 is 0, 1, 2 sushi, and the end is tacos. So if you run, it says sushi and tacos. So this is a shortcut to select everything on one end of the list, and only slicing or cutting the list at some point and take everything before or after that point. So if you don't provide anything on the left side, it will consider everything on the left. If you don't provide anything on the right side, it will consider everything on the right from the other index. And in most of the use cases with the list, we need this length of the list. For finding the length of the list, we have a very useful function, which is len. So len followed by the name of the list. If we use this len function, it will basically print the length of the list. So it has printed 4. See, this is the 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 elements in the list, and the index starts from 0, 1, 2, and 3. And don't confuse between the length of the list and indexes, because index starts from 0 and index for this menu is 0, 1, 2, and 3, but the length is a different thing. So length will be considering every item as a element, and it will count everything. Its length is basically count of number of items in the list. So it will say pizza is 1, burger, sushi, and 3. It will just count there are 4 items, so the length is going to be 4. And if we use this length function on string, let's say we have a string called atomic engineer, and if you print this len function using this atomic engineer, it says that 15, because if we use this len function over string, it will count the number of characters in the string. But if you use the same length over the list, it will count the number of items in the list. Now let's look at modifying a list. So lists are basically mutable, meaning we can change the element of this list. And this concept in list is very important. So let's say that we have this menu again, which has these 4 things. If you want to change the items of the menu, if you just do menu of 1, it will point to the first index. And if you assign some other thing, if you assign sandwich and then print menu, it will replace this burger with sandwich and gives us the menu back. See, if you see the result, it has printed pizza, sandwich, sushi, and tacos, meaning it has changed this item at the index 1 using this statement. So the lists are mutable and we can change the items in the list. And now let's look at some important operations on list, which are list concatenation and replication. Like strings, list can also be concatenated and replicated. And the plus operator combines two lists to create a new list value, and the star operator can be used with a list and integer. So let's say that we have a list called breakfast, and it has 2 items, eggs and bacon. And we also have another list called lunch, and for lunch we have sandwich and soup. And now I would like to create another list which contains both breakfast and lunch. We can just do, let's call it meals, by using a plus operator between the first and the second list. So if you do this and print meals, it will basically print everything as a single list, meaning it will basically concatenate two lists. So put everything inside a single list. So you see that we have eggs, bacon, sandwich, and soup inside a single list in the meals list. So that is the purpose of this plus operator in list. And for multiplication, let's say we would like to print lunch thrice, we can use this multiplication with an integer. So if we basically multiply a list with an integer, it will replicate the same list into n number of times based on this multiplication factor. So if we use this lunch into 3, we just replicate one list 3 times into the same list again. So this is replication in list. And the next one is removing values from list. So let's say that we have a list again, and our list contains the menu, and now I would like to remove pizza from this list. So for that we just do delete and menu of 0. We just do, this is going to be in place operation, and we need not reassign this to menu again. So this will delete item at index 0, and as the element at index 0 is removed, and the index will now start from burger. So our list will basically become like this. So let's try to check this out. So I am executing this delete, and then I am printing this menu. So you see that it has removed pizza, which is at index 0, and it has moved the burger to index 1. So there is nothing called no element or none which is getting replaced here, it's just going to remove that from the list, and the list will start from burger now. So burger will be at index 0. Now what if we want to add some values to the existing list? So we have seen the list concatenation, but what if we don't want to concatenate two lists but just add one value into the list? Let's say that we have a list called courses, and courses contain math, physics and chemistry, but you want to append biology to this list. So for that you can just use append method. Append followed by the value you are trying to add to this list, and this append will help you add a value to the list. And if you print this list now, after adding this, you could see, so it has printed math, physics, chemistry and biology. So append will basically add an element to the list, but if you notice, the element is added at the end. But what if you want to insert this biology somewhere in between? So for that you can use something called courses dot insert method. So the insert method will basically accept two parameter. The first parameter is going to be the position or the index where you want to insert, and the second parameter is going to be the value you are trying to insert. So basically the biology will be inserted at index 2, which is after physics. If you run this, you can see that it has done math, physics, biology and chemistry. So biology is now at index 2. Now let's look at sorting list. So sorting is basically ordering the list in ascending or descending order. So let's say that we have some scores of students, and the scores are 85, 92, 78, 95 and 88, and we wanted to order the scores in the ascending order, meaning the increasing order. We can just use scores dot sort. The sort function will help us sort the list in certain order. Basically the default order is going to be ascending order. Now if you print the scores, it will basically print 78, 85, 88, 92 and 95, which is the ascending order. So if you want to sort this list in a descending order, you can use scores dot sort again, and you can provide reverse equal to true. If you provide reverse equal to true, it will do descending order sorting. To check, it has printed in reverse order, like which is 95, 92, 88, 85 and 78 in the descending order. And the sorting will also work for list with some string values as well. Let's say that we have names as Jack, Alice, Bob and Charlie. If you run this names dot sort and print names, it will do the basic ascending order, which is starting from A and ending at Z. So see that it started with Alice, Bob, Charlie and Jack. And if you pass reverse equals true and run the same again, it will print Jack, Charlie, Bob and Alice, which is in the descending order of alphabets. Now what if you want to find if an element exists in a list or not? So in this case, let's use the same list which has Jack, Alice, Bob and Charlie, and you want to find if some name exists in the list or not. So for that you can use in operator. So meaning, let's say that you want to find if Alice exists in that list or not. So you can just use Alice in names. If you use Alice in names, it will see if Alice is present in names or not. If Alice is present in names, it will print true. If Alice is not present in names, it will print false. See, it has printed true, meaning Alice is present in names. Let's try to use this with some other thing. Let's say you're checking if Dinesh is present in names. So it's not present in names, so it will print false. And along with in, we also have not in operator. Not in basically checks if this name is not present in names. So if this name is not present, then it will return true. So you see, now it has printed true. So in and not in are basically used very frequently with list to find if an element is present in list or not. So generally with list, the very common technique or usage in Python is that we use list mostly with the for loops, because we need to iterate through the items in the list for doing any operation or anything, on the items that are present in the list. So we basically use list with for loops. So if you don't know about for loops, I have explained about for loops in the previous videos in this playlist. Go there and watch that. Let's consider the same old list again, which is courses containing some subjects, and we would like to print these courses in order. So we would like to basically say item as item at index 0 is math, item at index 1 is physics, index 2 is chemistry, index 3 is biology. So this is basically iterating through the list and finding what item is present at each index. For that we can just use the for loop. So let's say that we are using for I in range. So and range function is very commonly used along with the list and for loop, and I have explained about range function as well in the previous videos in this playlist. So we will be basically iterating through the range of length of this list, which is length of these courses. So I would like to print item at index I is, so I'm just printing item at index I. So I will be the value from 0 to 3, as the length of courses is 4, then I ranges from 0 to 3. So it will be 0, 1, 2 and 3. So item at index 0 is courses of 0. So when you do courses of 0, it will print math. And on the next iteration, it will print physics at index 1, chemistry at index 2, and biology at index 3. So you see that item at index 0 is math, 1 is physics, 2 is chemistry, and 3 is biology. So this is how lists are used in combination with for loop. And using this range function is handy because the code in the loop can access the index as well. Now let's say that you don't want to access this index, you can replace this for loop as for course in courses. So it will just access every course in the courses and you can print, and now this course will become the loop variable. That's why I'm using course here. So if we just run this, you see it says courses math, courses physics, courses chemistry and biology, and we cannot access the index because we don't know the index. Basically we can only know the items in the list using this method, but if we are using this range, we will have this access to index and value both. Let's say you want to access both the index and value in the loop variable itself. You can do that by using for index and item in enumerate method. So you can use enumerate and you should provide the list here. So when you use enumerate, it will basically return us the key and value. The key becomes the index and the value becomes the item at the index. And if we try to print this now, item at, just say item at idx, index is item. So if we run this, it says item at index 0 is math, index 1 is physics, 2 is chemistry, and 3 is biology. The magic here is we are having this index and value both in the loop variables itself. And what if you want to play some game and select some random subject from the courses? So even that is possible with the list. I hope you remember in the previous video we have seen this random library, which is import random, and we generated some random numbers using this library. And you can use this random library in combination with the list to generate some random items, and use random dot choice, random dot choice followed by the courses. It will basically help us select one random choice from this list. So if we print this, we are just passing this list to this random dot choice and it will select anyone. So now let's see it has selected math, but let's say if we are running this again, let's try to run it again. So now it's selected math, physics, right? So this is very random. So this is not in any order. So this is going to do some random selection from the list. So if we run this random for 3 times, it's not guaranteed that it will return 3 different items in the list. It can return the same item twice or thrice, or it can return any of them. It can return any number of times and it's not predictable. It's just random. See, it selected math, chemistry, and it selected chemistry again. It's like rolling a die and waiting for which outcome will come. And what if you want to shuffle the list? So even that is possible. So we are doing this shuffle. So let's print the list before shuffle, and also let's print the list after shuffle. So I'm just doing shuffle here, and let's see what's happening before and after the shuffle. So if you look at this, so this is the original list, and after the shuffle it has printed it in a different order. And you can notice that it's not doing any ascending or descending order. It's not shuffling in any predefined order. So it's basically going to shuffle in the order whatever that comes. It's going to be random. So whatever we do with this random library is going to be very random, and it cannot be predicted. So if you run it again, it's not guaranteed that chemistry will first come first. So you see that the order is changed, only these two are shuffled. So it would be any random shuffle. And there is one more operation which is reverse. So if you just do not random, it's not related to random. So if you do courses dot reverse, it will basically reverse the list. So I am just printing the list before reversing and after reversing. So reverse will basically reverse the list. So the first item will go to the last, and the last item will come to the first. So you see that math, physics, chemistry, and biology is the original order, and it has come in the reverse order, which is math, physics, chemistry, and biology from the end. So the item at index 0 will become the item at index -1. And this is everything about list. And there is something else called the tuple data type. So the tuple data type is basically very similar to list data type, except in two ways. The first, tuples are typed with parentheses, and in the case of list we are using square brackets, right? But tuple will be created using this parenthesis. Let's say that if you want to create the same courses as a tuple, we do this by using courses equal to this, and instead of the square brackets we use parenthesis. So if we print the type of this, it says it's a tuple. But in the case of the square bracket, if you print the same thing, it's going to print class of list. And the elements in the tuples can be accessed in the same way as list. We will use the square brackets for accessing the element in the tuple as well. The tuple is defined using the parenthesis, but for accessing we still use the square brackets. Let's say it has printed chemistry, which is at second position, and same in the tuple as well, the indexing will start from 0. And the main thing to note in the tuple is that, let's say that you want to replace the item at index 2, instead of a chemistry with some social. Let's see what happens at line 135. So it says at line 35 we got an error, which is tuple doesn't support item assignment. So the tuple is basically immutable. We cannot change the elements of this tuple. But if the same is converted into a list, we can reassign the values within the list. But this is not going to happen in tuple. So that is the basic difference between the list and the tuple. Now there is one important thing to remember when we are creating the tuple. Let's say that we are creating some tuple called menu, and in the menu if we use parenthesis and provide something called burger, and if you print the type of menu, see your menu only have one item, and if you print the type of menu, and it will print as string. It's not printing as tuple, it's printing as string. Because if the tuple has only one element, it will treat this as the string. So for making it to treat as a tuple, you need to end this with a comma. So if you end this with a comma and run it, it will treat this as a tuple. And we can typecast between the list and the tuple. We can convert the list to a tuple and the tuple to a list using the tuple and list functions. So let's say that we have courses which is of type tuple, and if you do list of courses, print type of this. So we are basically printing the type of list of courses. We are converting the courses into a list and then printing its type, right? So it will be converted into a list. You see it's a tuple, then converted into a list. The same way, if you have this as a list, and if you do tuple here, see that it's basically a list and got converted into tuple. So this is how we convert list into a tuple and tuple into a list. If you are using a tuple inside your code, anyone reading your code can easily understand that you don't want to change any of these elements inside this tuple, and that's why you will be using this tuple. And the second benefit of using tuples instead of list is that because they are immutable and their contents don't change, Python can implement some optimizations that make code using tuple slightly faster than the code using list. So this is all about list and tuple data types in Python. And these two are very important data structures when you are attending for any DSA related interviews or solving any DSA related problems. So just remember these few things. List is basically mutable data type. You can change them after creation. And list can contain items of different data types. It can have string, integer, floating, boolean, none type, and anything. And any methods on top of the list will modify the list in place. In place meaning the list itself will get changed. Also note that the negative indices count from the end of the list. When you use list of -1, it will take that as the last element of the list, and -2 will pick the second last element from the list. And slicing will basically create a new list. When you use indexing to access one element, it will create the element of that data type. But when you use slicing, it will create another list. It will slice the list, pick the elements, and create them as a new list again. And if you need an ordered sequence of values that never changes, use a tuple. So tuple is useful when you want the sequence of values or the list that never change. I recommend you practice working with list and tuple as much as you can. They are one of the most commonly used data structures in Python, and understanding them well will make your coding journey much smoother. And that's it for today's tutorial. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more programming tips. Drop your questions in the comments below, and happy coding. Thank you.